Hey everyone. Recently we made a video about the sons of Odin, a group of Germanic pagans who worshipped Woden instead of Warden, and it got us thinking, were there any other groups like them? And if so, how did they worship their version of Odin? Well, it turns out there was. In fact, there were a few. One of them even called themselves the True Church of Odin. Before we get into this video, I just want to say that I'm still not 100% on the pronunciation of these names. So if anyone has any tips or corrections, please let me know in the comments below. Anyway, back to the topic at hand. The group we're going to be talking about today is known as the Adruthana cult, also sometimes called the Einar cult, Ines Adruthana, whatever. This cult was active in northern Germany during the 19th century, and their main god was Othni, a West Germanic equivalent of Odin. Much of what we know about them comes from a book written by a man named Georg Friedrich Doller, who infiltrated the group for several years while posing as a student of the occult. He wrote down everything he experienced and learned while undercover and published it in a book after leaving the cult. It should be noted that some scholars doubt the accuracy of his account, but since we have no other sources on this group, we're kind of stuck with it. While most of the members of this cult were German, their beliefs seem to have been influenced heavily by Danish folklore and beliefs. In fact, the name Adruthana might actually mean something along the lines of Danish kindred, or Danish race. Much of their religious practices and beliefs seem to have been based off of the Elder Edda, specifically Snorri Sturluson's version of Norse mythology found within it. They seem to have rejected the more popular belief in a personal god found in the other Germanic pagan cults that were active around the same time. Instead, they focused on a pantheon of gods similar to those found in the Eddas. We can tell this because when they performed rituals, they had a ritual hall set up in a similar way to what we've seen described in the Edda. Their ritual hall even had two doors, one for the gods to enter through and one for the humans to enter through. They also seem to have believed that Yggdrasil, the world tree connecting the 9 worlds in Norse mythology, was located in Denmark. Now on to the rituals and beliefs of this group. The first thing I want to talk about is the ritual they performed every night before bed. According to Diller, every night the leader of the group would take an axe and place it on the head of a wooden figure of Odin that sat on an altar. Then they would start chanting and praying to Odin for protection during the night. Once they finished, they would leave the room and lock the door, only to return in the morning to find that the axe had moved from its original position and was now laying horizontally across the figure of Odin, which apparently signified that Odin had accepted their prayers and would protect them during the night. This sounds very similar to the nightly ritual performed by the sons of Odin, except instead of an axe, they used a sword. However, they both seem to have done it for protection, so maybe that's why. Another thing they did was hold feasts in honor of the gods, usually after a successful hunt. After the feast began, a large loaf of bread would be cut up and placed on the altar with a cup of ale. This was supposedly to honor Odin. Then they would have a ritual where they invited the gods into the home and asked them to accept the sacrifice that had been prepared for them. If you remember, the sons of Odin did something similar. They too would hold feasts in honor of Woden and would ask him to accept the food that had been set aside for him. So maybe this was a common practice among groups who worshipped one of the chief gods of the Germanic pantheon. Aside from feasting and holding nightly prayer rituals, the cult also performed human sacrifice. They only did this in extreme circumstances. However, usually when someone in the group was gravely ill. In those situations, they would bring the sick person to a crossroads and leave them there to die, believing that this would transfer the sickness to an animal that would pass by and take the life of the sacrificed person. Afterwards, the group would return to the crossroads, find the animal that had taken the person's life and kill it, then take the corpse back home and bury it. Now, some scholars believe that the group may have engaged in other blood sacrifices as well, but we can't be sure because those parts of Diller's book are heavily redacted. They also had some strange rules that their members had to follow. For example, all the male members had to stay under the rank of a lieutenant in the military. No one was allowed to get married without the consent of the group's leader, and sexual relations between members were forbidden. This last rule led to some interesting consequences, such as when one member brought his wife into a ritual. She was sitting in the room watching them perform when a female initiate came over to her, grabbed her hair and started pulling her towards the altar. The uninitiated woman started screaming, thinking that she was going to be sacrificed. The female initiate dragged her all the way over to the altar, then stopped and whispered something to her. The woman was confused, so the initiate repeated herself and told her to go home and bring some flowers to the next ritual. The woman left, returned the next night with some flowers and threw them on the altar. She then joined the rest of the group in their rituals. Later, the leader of the group explained to Dila that they tried to keep women out of the rituals as much as possible, but if they insisted on participating, then they would be allowed in as an initiate. But once a woman became an initiate, she could never be initiated again. Each time she wanted to participate in another ritual, she had to start over as a new initiate. In terms of beliefs, it seems that they believed Odin gave them secret knowledge and powers through dreams. Dreams were very important to this group. They kept dream journals to record the events that happened in their dreams, since they believed that through their dreams, Odin was teaching them secret knowledge. This goes along with the idea that Odin gave his followers secret knowledge, which is reflected in the title of Dila's book, The Secret Teachings of the High One. Since High One is a title often given to Odin, Dila himself claimed that he experienced this sort of divine knowledge through dreams, and he attributes much of what he knows about the cult to them. However, again, this is all secondhand through Dila's book, so we don't know exactly how accurate it is. We don't know much about their views on magic either, but it's likely that they believed Odin gave certain members of the cult magical powers. This is because one of the accusations leveled against the cult was that they were poisoning people who lived near their meeting places. It's likely that these accusations were spread by outsiders who didn't understand what the cult was doing and saw them performing rituals as practicing magic. So it's possible that the cult viewed Odin as a source of magical power. This is further supported by the fact that they held nightly rituals asking Odin for protection. Magic was often used to provide protection for practitioners, and many magical traditions had a deity that was responsible for providing protection. So it's likely that the cult believed Odin had power over the forces of death. Since they believed he could protect them at night, they may have also believed that he could raise the dead. In fact, there is a story in Dila's book where the cult supposedly raised someone from the dead during a ritual. Dila himself doesn't really say whether or not he believes it happened though, so who knows. I think that about covers everything about this group. Like I said earlier, our knowledge of them comes almost exclusively from Dila's book, which is problematic for obvious reasons. If you want to read his book for yourself, unfortunately it hasn't been translated into English, so you'll have to read it in German. Or maybe someday someone will translate it. But yeah, if you know anything else about this group, feel free to share it in the comments below. I'm always learning new things from you guys. Also, if you liked this video and want to see more like it, hit that subscribe button. Thanks to our supporters for making videos like this one possible. And thanks to all of you for watching.